Hello there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about two Sam Peckinpah films. First one, The Wild Bunch, one of the more famous films from his career. And the other one is Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which is one of the less famous ones from his career. Even though if you're a Peckinpah fan, this is a must-buy. It's one of those ones that came out, it tanked instantly. And, because Peckinpah had some hit. Wild Bunch was a hit. Straw Dogs was a hit. The Getaway was a hit. The Getaway followed this one. And he did films like Junior Bonner and Alfredo Garcia that, even during his peak period, they were not successes, but they were films that he was personally close to. And he kept on making films that did well, like in Europe, like Cross of Iron, Convoy. So he had hits, but some of his better films were the films that were not successes. This one is a out-of-print Arrow release, which has a bonus disc with like 10 hours worth of interviews with Sam Peckinpah, people who worked with him. So if you can get a hold of it, it's worth getting because the extras are good and the quality of the transfer is good. So I'll start with The Wild Bunch. Wild Bunch was the first film he made as a successful director, essentially. It wasn't successful when we started it, but this was the start of his career. He'd made Ride the High Country, which was a good film that did well, showed his promise. Then he get involved with Major Dundee, which he got fired off, and it was a horrible experience, and it was it wasn't entirely blacklisted, but it was not thought of as great. But the Wild Bunch was the first film where he really had everything together. Like, I'm amazed that happened after Major Dundee. But this is the first film where everything came together for him. At least in commercial and critical phase, And it was one of those films that just explodes. It's a major outpouring of talent. And he became a major director after Wild Bunch. And it came at a time when the Western needed to be shaken up. You had, like, what John Milius called the easy westerns, the stuff like Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, the polite westerns that were coming in. There was a comedy western that had nothing really to do with the West as it was, or it was all about smart ass. It followed on from Support Your Local Gunfighter and Support Your Local Sheriff and that kind of sort of Buck Kennedy type of comedy scripts. Well, Buck Kennedy started off early doing darker films with Bud Bettich and things. But Hollywood had that kind of comedy thing that wasn't working. I was working to a limited degree. The people who knew these westerns enjoyed watching these comedy versions. The best one is always going to be Rio Bravo and Howard Hawks' take on it, where he could have the humour, but he also could have the seriousness. There was other stuff going on. And it had the right balance that other films lacked. But it needed a shake-up. Now, you got a shake-up in Italy, which offended some people. Like, Italian westerns, because they're so cynical, because they came from Italy, which had dealt with fascism and had a lot of political extremes. You had the left wing and the right wing, both of them who believed they were right, and so there was a lot of communist directors doing westerns. There's a lot of political westerns with like subtext that floated below the surface. Even like Sergio Leone, as they get into it, he couldn't really miss out doing stuff about like the landowners and things. He didn't start out very political, but even as he went on, he was aware of what was going on. So even he was in the kind of commercial vein a little bit more than some other directors in that area. He still understood there was some political undertones you need to bring up. It wasn't quite built to the general level political commentary, but it was still something as the film went on. And then in America, you got the Wild Bunch. Wild Bunch was like the nihilism of the West. It was like the West has collapsed. And that would lead to Peckinpah to do like Alfredo Garcia and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And even something that's a bit more commercial, like Getaway, still had a lot of cynicism to it. And there was a sense of this was needed. This was during the Vietnam War. People were mad. So the kind of elite classes, the westerns that were comedy westerns, they had that. And to the young people, the westerns were just old hat. They were like, they were the expression of the older generation who they hated. Until the Italian westerns came out and it was like, oh, this we like. This is much more like the reality of the times. Is like, yeah, the people with the money are the bastards type of thing. And everyone's cynical and everyone's having to double cross each other to make do. And then that was brought to America with Peckinpah. Peckinpah was the one who brought it. I mean, Clint Eastwood came over from the Italian westerns and he made his westerns as well, which were not as cynical as Sam Peckinpah. You know, his were wry and amused, but still had a sense of outrage over some of the things that happened, but they didn't have the same, like, brutality that Peckinpah brought to it. Peckinpah was, like, just, like, everything's going to hell, basically. But the thing about that is, it takes away from that kind of reputation, takes away from the actual nuances of the films. These are not just one-note films about all the West is over. These actually have stories. These have characters. These have people who do things that, even though they're criminals, they still have some nobility in them and a lot of flaws. So, in that, William Holden plays the leader of the Wild Bunch. And these are a group of, like, bank robbers who have come from other things and have joined up and are now bank robbers. They're now a gang. But they're old. And they've dreaming of that big score means they can go over to Mexico and hide out in Mexico and not have to worry about money. But the reality is coming in at them was like Robert Ryan, who was one of their comrades in arms, was caught and he was offered a deal to get out of his prison sentence to hunt down the Wild Bunch. So he feels like a traitor. But he still does it like a professional. And he's dealing with a lot of people in the hunting party who are scumbags and goons and just terrible people. And the Wild Bunch are terrible people as well in lots of ways. It's like they have their own sense of loyalty, but they are terrible just in so many ways. And it's the idea of morality is so grey in this world. It's like there's even like when you go to see the rebels, they're compromised as well in their own way. They're not as compromised as the people who are keeping them down, who are. So Mexico is not like this paradise of like easy money. It's like, no, you have to keep in with whoever's running it at the time, and they've all got their getting their cut. So it's not that Mexico is, easy money for you, despite what the Wild Bunch thinks. The Wild Bunch have pretty much set their own gravestones by the beginning of the film. They are dead man walking. So it's like it's a bad situation. And they're just trying to keep surviving to fight another day, basically, at this point. But as the opportunities dwindle, step by step, they slowly but surely come around to go, the hell with this, we're going to fight back. But even without really finding out for themselves. It's just this sense of there's nihilism involved because they realise that they don't have a place in the world anymore. The world's passed them by. But it's also let's try to live up to some ideals they thought they once had, even if the play didn't. But they do have some sense of loyalty to some people. So you have the bunch. You've got Ernest Borgnine as the second in command, really, who's loyal to William Holden. You've got Warren Oates and another guy whose name I can't remember, who are the brothers who are racist. You've got a Mexican guy who's he's with the Wild Bunch, basically to get money to help the revolution. Even though he's trying to act as if he's more cynical than that, but he still fuels the revolution. And his sense of the revolution is the thing that brings everyone down at the end. And you have an old coot who's helping him with horses and things, and he's got his... And he was once, like them, and now he's too old for it. He's the one guy who grew too old for it in a life that most people don't. Although the Wild Bunch, like Holden and Borgnine, are getting towards that time, and so is Ryan as well. And it's like this sense of these people, the time has passed them by, and that's the kind of the emotional connection to the film. You do have the violence. The violence is really well done and really shocking. You've Chuck Connors at the beginning, who's a member of the World Bunch who gets killed in the first scene, and he's a lunatic. And a lot of the people get killed in the first bank robbery, which is a setup, and they realise halfway through, and it leads to a thing where they're going to run almost instantly. So they're on the run forever in this film. They're always on the run from these people chasing them. So this is why it's a more realistic version of Butch Cassidy. They've always on the run from people chasing them as well, but it's played as comic. And this one, not as serious. These guys are out to kill them, even though the guys are incompetent a lot of the time. They're led by Robert Ryan, who actually is good at tactics. And the political machinations in Mexico are really deadly as well. So it's a sense of it's a world that it's too complicated for anyone to survive in. And it's the sense of like that's why this time and place was dangerous. There was no easy answer for anything. Like in a sense, the Wild Bunch might have been people with careers before, but everything's going to hell for them. You never know how long they've been a gang for. Certain things aren't played out. You get a suggestion they've been a gang for a long time, but they probably didn't start that way as youthful men. They probably started as something else. The way that the young Mexican is still a youthful guy who has ideals that haven't been ripped from him the way it tends to have in the Wild Bunch. The Wild Bunch tends to be feeling of each one's at a different stage in the generations of what it takes to be this kind of man. Like you get the young Mexican, then you get the two brothers who are not as old as the older guys in the bunch, but they are more cynical and they are hooring the way that Holden and Robert Ryan once did, and George Dean once did, but best of all Holden. And then you've got the older guys who have seen it all and realise that time has passed. You have this sense of a time passed, a type of progression of a certain type of man has passed. It's not going to be that way anymore for men. It's going to be something else. Probably something less horrible for the Americans. But in Mexico, it still seems that there's still a long way to go. And even the racist, like Warren Oates character, even when they get the Mexican villains basically get the Mexican guy, and they're going to kill him. Even they who have been racist to him the whole time say, "No, we're going to go back and get him." So it's even they have some decency, even though it's just an idiot. So that's a wonderful film. It's got terrific action. The characters are great. You really feel for everybody. I mean, my favourite character is actually the Robert Ryan character because he's torn, because he knows what he's doing. And in lots of ways, the right thing to do, but it's also he feels he's a traitor. But he actually has the most complicated thing, and it's also the fact that he get caught because of a mistake by William Holden. And Holden knows that. Holden knows it's his fault that Robert Ryan's chasing him. It's not Robert Ryan's fault. It's his fault. So that complicates matters. The whole details with the Mexican guys in charge complicate matters because they are given everything they want to do what they want and do what they're good at. But some conscience nags at them. There's just a lot of complications in this film that are really interesting that people forget because they just want the violence. And the violence is impressive and dark, and it's been repeated millions of times in films, but without any political, back into it, without any anger about the way the world is. It's just like Rambo took so much from this film without the political aspect. They made that kind of right-wing thing rather than this thing is objectively about how horrible this life is, how you don't want to be near it. And speaking of horrible, you have Alfredo Garcia, which is set in the modern times, but modern times for the 1970s, but it's also a film about the past. The suggestion of this is society in Mexico that we're travelling through, that people are kept down, people cannot get ahead. It's not the ruling classes where they have the money. I mean, there are ruling classes, but these guys have the money and keep it for themselves and are corrupt. and there are people in the cities who are making money, but in the kind of the backwater landscapes, nothing's much changed since the World Punch. It's like you have your bosses, you have cars now, but there's a lot of superstition, there's a lot of close communities, and everyone's trying to make a buck to try and survive. And Warren Oates plays a guy who's trying to make money by finding Alfredo Garcia. Alfredo Garcia was a friend of his who has died, and he knows he's dead, and he's been buried. And this guy, and Garcia was a bit of a womanizer, and he got a woman pregnant who was the daughter of a rich man, and he wants the head. And Warren Oates is like, I'll go get it, I know where it is. Oh, I know his girlfriend knew it is, because his girlfriend, Oates and Garcia, had a sort of weird relationship. Like, the girlfriend went back and forth a little bit, even though Oates loves her. But she had a kind of, she was with Garcia before in the past and still had an affection for him. So it's all complicated. But he's saying, like, we'll go get the head, and this will give us money to get out, because Oates has debts. He needs the money. It's like, it's not just that kind of thing of, well, it would be nice to have the money. It's like, no, I really need the money. I'm really on my arse now. This is important for me, because he's a pianist in a dive bar, and he's not going anywhere. So, but he's in love with his girlfriend. So they decide to go and get the head, and they'll make it a kind of trip with picnics and things, and they feel they're getting followed. So people know that they're going after the head. And the story's about them dealing with both the kind of the people from the back areas of Mexico who have their superstitions, who do not like him taking the head of their friend, even though it's because he was his friend as well. He's a local guy, he should not be losing his head, because it's sacrilegious to his ability to walk in the afterlife and all that. And Oates doesn't care about that. He's getting the head because he doesn't believe it, and it's like he needs the money. But you've also got guys who are trying to hunt down Garcia as well, because they're going to get a bigger. If they bring the head in, they'll get more money than they're offering Warren Oates, because they offered Oates money to find the head and bring it back to them. But they want the head, and they're going to get much more money from it. And Oates knows he's been conned, but it's like, I could do that money. So they're trying to double cross him as well without paying him anything. And all hell breaks loose. Slowly but surely, Oates starts to slowly lose his mind. His girlfriend gets killed through the film. Other people are killed. And what starts out as a guy who's quite peaceful and a drunk, he can stand up for himself, but he's not out for trouble. It gets more and more violent as the violence seeps into him, as he tries to get his head back to this one guy who's caused it all by the fact that he couldn't take the fact that his daughter had sex with a guy he found undesirable. And it's just a great movie about the kind of insanity of man, and insanity capitalism creates with people is like that sense of everyone's struggling to survive, everyone's struggling for any money, and people who have the money can do whatever they want because they can pay people off. And it's like what that structure does to people down the line, how people get killed to try and make a living, how people get killed just on the kind of wishes of a old rich guy who doesn't have a clue why he wants anything. He just wants revenge for something that is stupid. And the film is just wonderful. Oates is amazing. He doesn't get many lead character, but this one is one of his leads, and he's great. As a guy who's slowly losing his mind, and he's slowly engaging in violence. And his girlfriend character is also great because she's able for him. She knows what he is and what his flaws are, but also loves him. And they have a really sweet relationship. So when she dies, it is brutal because you sense of you actually liked her, and it's a sense of someone get killed that didn't deserve it. And it obviously drives him crazy, and it leads to more violence as he starts to work his way back down the line of people who's paying the money to finally find out who wants the head, which leads to the final conclusion with him against the guy who wants the head of Alfredo Garcia. It's a wonderful film. And it's just the sense of this is almost like the end of the run of the Wild Bunch. It's like, what happened to the people in the Wild Bunch? Well, some people get the money and the rest didn't. The rest had to rot. And then some Americans came over here and try to survive within the ruin of that, and it all went to hell. It's just a sense of a cynical world and the collapse, moral collapse within the cynical world, which is what Peckinpah was about. He was really about the Pat Garnbelly kid, this film, Wild Bunch, a sense of the people with the money create so much damage to others and they don't care. It's just, they're just so selfish, and just the brutality of people, even the people who are lower in the food chain, have to learn brutality to survive and become tainted by violence and become creatures they never wanted to become just to survive. And it just becomes this hellhole, of humanity that's not really allowed to breathe. And it's a sense of humans destroying each other over just little bits of money. That's what it's about. And just for things that don't matter, and lives that get destroyed left, right, and centre. And that's what the sense is in the best of Peckinpah films. People are trying, but they're destroyed by themselves and their own dark instincts, and destroyed by the society around them. So these are brilliant films. I highly recommend them. Go see them as the biggest screen as possible. Shout out to Chris Mohan. Yes, I watched it on the projector. You should too. If you get the films. May as well torture them. Right, that's me for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Right, bye.